Welcome to our YouTube channel, where we dive deep into the world of personal and professional development. Today, we present a comprehensive summary of the insightful book, Crucial Accountability, authored by Kerry Patterson. So, let's dive into the summary of this incredible book. But before we dive into the content, I kindly request a moment of your time to appreciate this video by liking it, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell. Your support means a lot to me. Thank you so much. In Crucial Accountability, Kerry Patterson, along with his co-authors, introduces a powerful framework for holding others accountable and creating positive change in both personal and professional relationships. The book helps readers navigate through difficult conversations with practical strategies and real-life examples. Patterson emphasizes the importance of addressing accountability issues effectively by mastering the art of dialogue. By engaging in open and honest conversations, individuals can create a culture of mutual respect and trust while resolving conflicts and holding others accountable for their actions. One of the core principles discussed in Crucial Accountability is the technique of mastering your stories. By recognizing and challenging the narratives we create in our minds, we can avoid jumping to conclusions and instead focus on facts to address accountability issues effectively. Through compelling case studies and real-life examples, the authors of Crucial Accountability demonstrate how individuals and organizations have successfully implemented the book's principles to transform their relationships and enhance their results. By applying the strategies outlined in the book, readers can develop a toolbox of skills to hold themselves and others accountable in a constructive and empowering way. Crucial Accountability is a guidebook for improving workplace accountability. The authors provide practical tools to help individuals and teams manage violations, broken promises, and poor performance, leading to better relationships and improved outcomes. Kerry Patterson is a communication, organizational behavior, and corporate training expert, and a co-founder of Vital Smarts, a leadership development company. Joseph Grenny is a leading social scientist and consultant in the field of business performance, and a co-founder of Vital Smarts. Ron McMillan is a social scientist, consultant, and speaker on the topics of corporate culture, organizational change, and interpersonal relationships. He's a co-founder of the Covey Leadership Center and Vital Smarts. Al Switzler is a business communication expert, consultant, and co-founder of Vital Smarts. He's worked with hundreds of organizations and served on the faculty of several universities, including the University of Michigan and the University of Kentucky. David Maxfield is a leading researcher in interpersonal skill development. He completed doctoral work at Stanford University, where he received the Dean's Award for Innovative Industrial Education. Together, Patterson, Granny, McMillan, and Switzler are the co-authors of the New York Times bestseller Crucial Conversations. Crucial Accountability tackles the often tricky issue of addressing broken promises and unmet expectations. The book shares tools and steps for holding friends, family, and colleagues accountable for their actions, and enabling them to fulfill commitments and meet future expectations. Crucial Accountability is an essential read for anyone wanting to improve their ability to hold themselves and others accountable. Here's why this book stands out. It offers a practical framework for addressing and resolving conflicts and performance gaps, empowering readers to take action and achieve desired outcomes. The book combines real-world examples and case studies to demonstrate how accountability can transform relationships, teams, and organizations, making it relevant and relatable. With its straightforward strategies and insightful advice, Crucial Accountability keeps readers engaged, making the topic of accountability anything but boring. Those are the individuals who truly deserve to immerse themselves in this extraordinary book. Managers fed up with missed deadlines. Friends and partners frustrated by broken commitments. Parents who want to teach their children accountability. When we're in a relationship with someone who has broken a promise, violated a commitment, behaved badly, or otherwise failed to meet our expectations, we're forced to decide whether to bring up the issue and risk making our relationship worse or suffer in silence and let the issue continue. Luckily, communication and management experts Patterson, Grenny, Maxfield, McMillan, and Switzler explain that if we properly prepare for, execute, and follow up on our accountability conversation, we can solve our issues while improving our relationships. This guide explores the steps necessary to effectively solve accountability issues and provides insights from other fundamental theories of interpersonal communication, management, and psychology. We'll learn how to discuss the right issue, control our emotions, address sticky topics, and effectively follow up on our chosen solution, ultimately putting an end to accountability issues and steering our relationships in a positive and productive direction. Accountability conversations are the discussions we have when someone breaks a promise, violates a commitment, behaves badly, or fails to meet our expectations. These conversations are important because without them, our relationship with the other person could end up permanently damaged. Unfortunately, people tend to handle these conversations incorrectly or not have them at all. In Crucial Accountability, communication and management experts Kerry Patterson, Joseph Grenny, David Maxfield, Ron McMillan, and Al Switzler explain how we can effectively have these conversations to solve the issues at hand while preserving our relationship with the other person. Why accountability conversations are crucial. Holding others accountable is a crucial skill because if we handle our issues incorrectly or not at all, we may experience negative consequences. If we neglect the issue and remain silent, we could permanently damage our relationship with the other person by developing toxic communication and passive-aggressive behaviors. If we bring up the issue and handle it improperly, we could risk offending the other person, thereby damaging our relationship and reputation with them. In either case, if we fail to bring up the issue or do so incorrectly, we allow the issue to continue and possibly get worse. In 12 Rules of Life, psychologist Jordan Peterson corroborates the author's argument that you must plan a crucial discussion to effectively execute it. He explains that if we communicate our interpersonal conflicts without planning ahead, we risk inciting emotional reactions from the other person such as resentment, jealousy, frustration, and even hatred. Like the authors of Crucial Accountability, Peterson notes that if we ignore an issue because we fear these emotional reactions, we may end up creating more negative consequences, such as building up negative emotions and allowing the issue to persist. Either way, these outcomes will damage our relationship with the other person. Consequently, the authors wrote Crucial Accountability to help bosses, employees, parents, friends, and others effectively handle these conversations. They have written several best-selling books on communication, performance, and leadership skills and have created a leadership training company, Crucial Learning, that offers supplemental courses. Overall, they refer to these fundamentals as crucial skills. Crucial Accountability hones in on one of these crucial skills, holding others accountable. Crucial Accountability is a step-by-step guide that teaches us how to properly prepare for, execute, and follow up on our accountability conversations. As an added bonus, the authors discuss a few exceptional situations that may require a slightly different approach from the steps in their guide, and advise us on how to handle these situations. Preparing for the discussion. The authors explain that to prepare for your discussion, you first need to identify the key issue at the root of the accountability grievance, and then determine whether or not you should discuss it. You also need to avoid making assumptions by trying to see the issue from the other person's perspective. Identify the key issue. The first step to an accountability conversation is identifying the key issue and then determining whether or not it's worth bringing up. The authors explain that accountability grievances usually come in bundles. Instead of just one problem, there are often a whole host of issues that make up the grievance. However, there is usually one key issue at the root of the grievance, the underlying problem causing all the other issues. When the key issue is identified and solved, the other issues will likely be resolved as well. If we don't pinpoint the underlying problem, we could end up addressing the wrong issue or addressing too many issues at once, neither of which will solve the problem. Avoid gunny sacking. Sometimes when trying to identify the key issue, you'll end up with more than one fundamental issue that's bothering you. This may be because you're actually dealing with several key issues that are independent of each other rather than linked to a single accountability grievance. In other words, an older set of issues that you've harbored over time. Harboring small resentments over time is called gunny sacking and can severely damage or even end your relationship. To address this kind of problem, you'll need to have multiple conversations so each individual key issue can be discussed and addressed. Determine whether or not to address the issue. The second step is deciding whether the issue is worth bringing up. The authors explain that sometimes, the issue we're upset about doesn't warrant an accountability conversation. They explain that the purpose of holding an accountability conversation should be to maintain a positive and productive relationship with the other person. If your intent for the conversation doesn't match this definition, or having the discussion won't achieve this goal, you should probably cope or get over the issue rather than bringing it up. For example, if you want to have an accountability conversation because your adult daughter dyed her hair, this probably isn't a valid issue. Your intent for the discussion isn't to improve your relationship or its productivity. Rather, it's to impose your worldview on her. And the consequences of the discussion will neither improve your relationship nor resolve the problem. Instead, it will probably make both of them worse. Accountability conversations are the crucial and complicated discussions we have when someone breaks a promise, violates a commitment, behaves badly, or otherwise fails to meet our expectations. If we don't manage these conversations effectively, our personal and professional relationships can suffer and even collapse. Crucial Accountability was written to address these problems, offering a step-by-step guide that teaches people how to effectively plan, execute, and follow up on accountability discussions so they can maintain healthy relationships and effective organizations. Kerry Patterson, Joseph Grenny, David Maxfield, Ron McMillan, and Al Switzler are the founders of Crucial Learning, a company dedicated to creating best-selling books and courses focused on improving people's communication, performance, and leadership skills. For over 30 years, the authors have been working together to help individuals and organizations and have worked with more than 300 of the Fortune 500 companies. What's an accountability conversation? Accountability conversations are the crucial and complicated discussions we have when someone breaks a promise, behaves badly, or otherwise fails to meet our expectations. When these situations arise, we are forced to decide whether or not to address the issue. We make this decision by drawing up a cost-benefit analysis in our head. Is the effort of bringing up the affront worth the possible consequences? Most people choose to remain silent after doing this mental math due to the underlying fear that speaking up will damage their relationship with the people involved, even if it means perpetuating and worsening the issue. However, management and communication experts Kerry Patterson, Joseph Grenny, David Maxfield, Ron McMillan, and Al Switzler argue that if we learn to effectively hold accountability conversations, we can achieve our desired outcome and improve our relationship with the other person. Accordingly, Crucial Accountability is a step-by-step guide that teaches people how to plan, execute, and follow up on accountability discussions to maintain healthy relationships and effective organizations. Here are the key chapters in this remarkable book, each holding valuable insights and captivating narratives that promise to engage and enlighten readers. Part 1. Identifying the issue and whether to discuss it. The authors argue that the effectiveness of an accountability conversation largely depends on the preparation we do ahead of time. To prepare for your accountability conversation, you must identify and fully understand the key issue that underpins the problem. Then, you must decide whether or not the issue is worth addressing. In Part 1, we'll explore how the authors recommend you approach each of these steps. Identifying the key issue. Accountability grievances often come in bundles so that instead of just one problem, there are a whole host of issues that make up the grievance as a whole. However, there is usually one key issue at the root of the grievance, the underlying problem causing all the other issues. The authors argue that when you identify and target the key issue, you'll likely resolve the remaining issues as well. However, if you fail to identify the key issue, you risk either pursuing the wrong issue or trying to address too many issues at once, neither of which will result in a positive outcome. Part 2. See the whole story. The authors assert that in order to have an effective accountability discussion, we must first consider the other person's side of the story. Otherwise, we're likely to charge into the conversation with unfair assumptions that will cause us to handle the situation poorly. When someone fails to meet our expectations, the authors explain that the following process subconsciously unfolds in our heads. First, we see and hear what the person did. Second, we tell ourselves a story, make assumptions about why they did it. Third, we develop a feeling based on the story we imagined. And fourth, we act based on that feeling. For example, we see that our roommate didn't wash their dishes. We tell ourselves a story that they didn't wash the dishes because they're lazy. This causes us to see the roommate as a villain and develop aggressive feelings towards them. When they get home from work, we act by accusing them of never helping out. Unfortunately, because the stories we tell ourselves are typically negative stories, we tend to then handle the situation poorly by either acting aggressively or avoiding the issue altogether. Part 3. Initiating the conversation. The authors assert that the first step in initiating an accountability conversation is creating a safe space. To do this, you'll need to establish both mutual respect so the other person doesn't feel you're belittling them, and a feeling of a shared purpose so they understand that you're working toward a common goal rather than trying to point out their faults. Establishing mutual respect and shared purpose. The authors explain that to begin your conversation with mutual respect and a shared purpose, you must explain the issue succinctly and respectfully. If we fail to do this, we could risk overwhelming the other person with information, compromising their feeling of safety. To accomplish this, 1. Lay out the facts of the situation. Explain what your expectations were and how the other person broke them. Remember to focus on facts rather than emotions. Part 4. How to discuss motivational barriers. Before initiating the conversation, the authors explain that you must identify whether the other person failed to meet expectations due to a lack of motivation or a lack of ability. In this section, we'll explore their advice on how to deal with motivational struggles. The importance of relaying consequences. The authors write that if someone fails to meet our expectations, we must explain to them the consequences because people make decisions based on the consequences they anticipate. If the other person doesn't anticipate negative outcomes for neglecting to meet expectations, for example, believing that nothing bad will happen and they can get away with it, then they'll likely continue to not meet expectations. On the other hand, if they foresee negative consequences happening, for example, getting in trouble, letting people down, or depreciating their reputation, they'll most likely choose to meet expectations to avoid these outcomes. The authors note that people are more motivated to avoid negative outcomes than they are to pursue positive outcomes. They theorize that this happens because rewards create extrinsic motivation, the desire to do more. Part 5. How to discuss ability barriers. If we've determined that the accountability issue is due to an ability barrier, the authors assert that we can help the other person overcome that obstacle by making our request both possible, by removing ability barriers, and easy, by removing extraneous or arduous steps. We can accomplish this and enable the other person to meet expectations by involving the other person, identifying the root cause of the ability barrier. We'll explore each of these in the sections below. Involving the other person. The authors explain that there are 3 primary benefits of involving the other person in the process of identifying ability barriers. It makes it much easier to identify the primary barrier because the other person is likely to know better than you whether it's personal, social, or structural. Jointly brainstorming ways to solve the problem will likely produce more effective solutions because the other person is closer to the problem than you are. Therefore, they will likely have a more complete view of the issues and how they can be fixed. People are generally more motivated to enact a solution when they are involved in developing it. Part 6. How to handle emergent issues mid-conversation. The authors explain that unexpected issues often arise in the midst of accountability conversations. When these new issues are more urgent, time-sensitive, serious, emotional, or important to the other person. Part 7. What not to do while discussing accountability. The authors stress the importance of understanding what not to do in an accountability conversation almost as much as what to do. Because we've likely grown up watching people handle accountability issues incorrectly, these learned behaviors slip out when we least expect them to. By understanding what not to do, we can recognize and halt these behaviors as soon as we see ourselves enacting them. The authors emphasize what not to do during accountability conversations because these bad behaviors are common practices for many people. Experts second this assertion, explaining that in order to develop better habits, we first need to identify what we're doing wrong, which is the purpose of this section. Before giving advice, listen to the other person's perspective. The authors assert that we need to listen to the other person's point of view in order to make accurate judgments and solutions. Part 8. Making a plan and following up. After you've successfully discussed the accountability issue and determined a solution, the authors recommend creating a plan of action and then following up to ensure that everyone follows the agreed-upon plan. While this step seems pretty straightforward, don't underestimate its importance. Leaving the plan of action and follow-up vague could undermine the hard work and planning you put into preparing for the conversation and developing a solution. Determining who does what and when. The first part of creating a plan of action is identifying the specific tasks that need to be completed, who needs to do them, and when they need to be done. For example, if the agreement is that the other person will work on being more creative, you might say, I want you to come up with 3 new ideas for how to market our product each week by noon on Friday. The authors especially emphasize the importance of being clear about who will complete each task. Avoid using vague statements like, let's come up with 3 new ideas. Terms like, let's and we undermine accountability. Part 9. The truly tough situations and how to handle them. While the steps laid out above are sufficient to solve most accountability issues, the authors note a few situations where extra steps or precautions may be necessary. The section below will discuss these novel situations and how to handle them. Dealing with an obstinate person. When the other person is impossible to hold accountable because they either refuse to have an accountability discussion or refuse to change their ways, your options are unfortunately limited. When you've done your best to converse and it seems the situation is a lost cause, you have 2 options. Endure or end the relationship. Are you dealing with a narcissist? People who refuse to be held accountable or to change their behaviors tend to have narcissistic tendencies and could even have narcissistic personality disorder, a condition that causes people to lack empathy for others and to struggle to see their own faults. Because narcissists are masters at making people like them, it can sometimes be hard to tell when you're dealing with one. Do you have a colleague who's always missing deadlines? Or a partner who seems to ignore simple requests, like taking shorter showers to lower the water bill? Well, you're not alone. Day in and day out, people around the world are disappointed by others who fail to keep promises or meet expectations. When this happens, you're presented with a choice. Speak up and hold the person accountable or suffer in disappointed silence. Unfortunately, most people opt for the latter simply because they don't know what to do, or they're scared of creating a bigger problem. But fortunately, these insights provide the tools to help the silent majority tackle their accountability issues without breaking a sweat or relationships. In these insights, you'll learn how to tell if you should speak up, the fundamental mistake we all make, and when coping is the best choice. Let's continue exploring the additional key takeaways of the book to gain further insights and knowledge. 1. Choose the issue you care about most and consider whether it should be addressed. Consider this scenario. You've asked your boss for a well-deserved raise several times. Each time he's promised to make it happen and each time he's gone back on his word. Understandably, you're frustrated. And this feeling intensifies when he singles you out in a meeting to ask that you stop nagging about the raise. When you privately approach him about this public berating, he scoffs that you're wasting his time and walks off. Not only has your boss repeatedly broken a commitment, but he's also disrespected you in front of colleagues and dismissed your valid concerns. You strongly feel that he should be held accountable for his behavior, but where do you start? The key message here is, choose the issue you care about most and consider whether it should be addressed. Like many things, accountability issues are rarely simple and straightforward. They tend to come in complicated bundles. Before holding an accountability discussion, it's important to identify the various problems and decide which is most important to you. To do this, think CPR, content, pattern, and relationship. Here's an example. The first time a teenager comes home late, the content of breaking curfew is a problem. If she promises to stick to the rules but doesn't, there's an additional issue, a pattern of rule breaking. Let's say father and daughter discuss the pattern, and there's a renewed commitment to the rule. But days later, she breaks curfew again. At this point, her father can't trust her, which means the negative effect on their relationship is yet another problem. In addition to considering the content, pattern, and relationship, we need to think of consequences and intentions. So, in our father-daughter scenario, the father could be upset about the potential consequences of staying out after curfew, which can be dangerous for a teenager. Alternatively, he might be frustrated by what he assumes are his daughter's intentions. that she could be breaking the rules just to aggravate him. After listing all the associated problems and pinpointing what matters most, you're ready to schedule a chat, right? Well, not quite. You need to decide if the issue actually warrants a conversation. There are many clues that your accountability issue should be addressed. If you feel hostile towards the other person, you should definitely bring the issue up. Ditto if your conscience is nagging you. But what if you're avoiding the conversation because you feel helpless or fear making things worse? This too is an indication that you should speak up, and the following insights will explain exactly how. 2. Create the right climate for an accountability discussion by avoiding assumptions. Imagine that a man wants to discuss a promise that his girlfriend has broken. However, the discussion heads downhill within seconds. Before he even speaks, he's fuming. And when his words finally come, they're explosive. As far as he's concerned, she's a terrible partner who had no intention of keeping the promise. From his girlfriend's perspective, she has a good reason for letting him down, but his hostile approach triggers an equally hostile response. The two quickly start a shouting match. 3. Make others feel safe by showing respect and establishing a shared purpose. Think about this for a moment. A friend wants to discuss something important that you let slip. What feelings come up for you? Chances are you feel anxious. Maybe you feel bad that you disappointed a good friend. You might even wonder if you've jeopardized the relationship. Basically, you feel unsafe. The same goes for anyone who's confronted about an infraction. When people don't feel safe, they either become silent or defensive, which leads to an unproductive conversation. To motivate a change in behavior, explain the natural consequences. 5. Help someone be more accountable by working together to remove barriers. Let's say Michael, a dedicated executive assistant, is tasked with putting together a crucial monthly report for his manager. This report is important for updating the higher-ups, so delivering it on time is essential. Michael welcomes this responsibility and eagerly works on the report each month. But there's a problem. To complete the task, he needs input from his colleague Anika, who rarely provides the information on time. As a result, he often delivers the report late. 6. Stay flexible enough to handle unexpected challenges. Wouldn't it be great if everything went according to plan? Unfortunately, that's not how the world works, including accountability conversations. Sure, you can go in ready to motivate and problem solve, knowing exactly what you want to discuss. Then, out of the blue, something unanticipated pops up, an even bigger problem, maybe, or an explosive reaction from the other person. 7. End accountability discussions by agreeing on a detailed plan of action. Remember Michael, the hardworking executive assistant we met earlier? He was struggling to meet deadlines because his colleague, Anika, wasn't sending the necessary information on time. Well, determined to get to the bottom of the issue, his manager has a conversation with both Michael and Anika. She speaks to them respectfully, uncovers the different problems, and stresses the importance of delivering the report on time. Satisfied that the issue has been addressed, she ends the conversation with high hopes of receiving the next report before the deadline. In conclusion, crucial accountability is a must-read for anyone looking to improve their communication skills, resolve conflicts, and build stronger relationships. By embracing the principles outlined in this book, readers can create a culture of accountability and trust that paves the way for personal and professional growth. You can find the link to acquire a copy of this incredible book in the description below. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Crucial Accountability Book Summary. We hope you found this overview helpful and inspiring. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more book summaries and insightful content. And share this uplifting summary with someone who may benefit from hearing them. Leave a comment down below if you've read this book or have any other recommendations for us. And also don't forget to explore our curated playlists of book summaries covering various topics. For future updates, stay tuned for more insightful content on personal development and leadership. Until next time, keep exploring and growing.